Today let's talk about Nephthys. In Egyptian mythology, Nephthys is the Greek form of an epithet, correctly spelled Nebathet and Nethet, in transliteration from Egyptian hieroglyphs. Nephthys, therefore, is a member of the great Ennead of Heliopolis, a daughter of Nut and Geb. Nephthys was the divine corresponding power or completion of her sister, Isis, and, in a somewhat lesser fashion, the sister wife of Set. Nephthys is occasionally regarded as the mother of the funerary deity Anubis. Nephthys apparently was known in a wide spectrum of ancient Egyptian temple theologies and cosmologies as the useful goddess or the excellent goddess. In this sense, late ancient Egyptian temple texts prove to be pointedly accurate depictions of a far more nuanced goddess, one who represented divine assistance and protective guardianship on a multitude of levels. A more certain understanding in regard to this divinity has been hampered necessarily due to the fragmented aspect of ongoing efforts to document and publish specific temple and other inscriptional discoveries, excavations, and theologies, along with relatively few concerted attempts to draw various and disparate strands of evidence into some form of cohesive whole. In this regard, the work of Ehonung has proved to be revelatory, along with the work of several noted scholars. Perhaps most interestingly for our current consideration, Nephthys was not at all restricted to the purely passive or formless status so often accorded to her by various commentators. On the contrary, Nephthys quite often is featured as a rather ferocious and dangerous divinity, capable of incinerating the enemies of the pharaoh with her fiery breath. As the primary nursing mother of the incarnate pharaonic god, Horus, Nephthys also was considered to be, de facto, the mightiest nurse of the reigning pharaoh himself. Though many goddesses could arbitrarily assume this role, depending upon the local setting, Nephthys was ostensibly and nationally irreplaceable in this function. It is important, within this framework, to appreciate the potency of the Assyrian royal mortuary deity cults, and their primacy, in understanding exactly how the chief Assyrian deities exercised enormous influence in widespread, fundamentally crucial temple rituals and practices from Dynasty V and beyond. Certainly with the coming of the New Kingdom Ramesside pharaohs, in particular. One witnesses a royal lineage enamored of Mother Nephthys, as is attested in various stelae and a wealth of inscriptions at Karnak and Luxor. Nephthys was a member of that great city Zena just as she was in Heliopolis, and her altars were present in the massive complex, and inherited reverence for protective qualities made Nephthys a goddess of notable flexibility who did not, as is often stated, live constantly in the shadow of her great sister, Isis. Moreover, Nephthys was one of the few national goddesses to serve as tutelary divinity of her own district, or nome, in ancient Egyptian history. Indeed, Upper Egyptian Nome 7 and its city, Hwt Sekhem, were considered, at least by Greco-Roman times, to be the unique fiefdom of Nephthys. Nephthys is a goddess of undetermined origin, but contrary to many erroneous claims, her ancient Egyptian name did not mean lady of the house, as if referring to an ordinary human home. She was not in any way to be identified with some notion of a housewife, nor as the primary lady who ruled the common domestic household. This is a pervasive and egregious error, oft repeated in very many commentaries concerning this deity. Rather, her name means quite specifically, Lady of the Temple Enclosure. This title, which seems to be more of an epithet rather than a goddess name, likely indicates the association of Nephthys with one particular temple or some specific aspect of the Egyptian temple that is now partially lost to modern understanding. We do know, from a wealth of sources cf. P. Wilson, that, along with her sister Isis, Nephthys represented the temple pylon or the great flagstaff heralding the divine dwelling. Due to her very streamlined role as a protective entity, we may even consider the simplest explanation in which Nephthys truly lives up to her unique epithet, and is to be identified with the fundamentally protective temple enclosure wall itself. All other efforts to determine the exact origin of this goddess remain speculative. To reiterate, her name seems to be an epithet masking the original, sacred name of this divinity, whatever it was. Sacred names were kept secret. She may well have been artificially created by Heliopolitan theologians to serve as a counterpart or doppelganger of Isis, but the specific nature of her epithet mistress of the temple enclosure mitigates against this, and the idea remains speculative.